So, Reluctant Enemies, Operation Exporter, which is June-July 1941. Um, Probably confusing everybody straight away by running the map the way I have, but I'm showing it with the Commonwealth effectively moving from right to left, the Vichy defending the area to the left. So Beirut is off the map to the left as we look at it. And Haifa is very down the bottom on the right hand side. But I just wanted to give kind of an overview first of all of the map area and how I've kind of set it up. Most of the setup is strictly obviously as the setup instructions. I've kind of added to it by the use of these little red and green blocks that you can see. They essentially are just an aid for me to show me where I've got supply, just to speed it up. And also what I've done is I've kind of marked with those red arrows that you can see the main axis of the attacks. So it's an interesting game in that it's divided into these four very distinct approaches, if you like. And I think one of the things for the Commonwealth player is that you probably can't push all of them. You could argue that the two that you see at the top of the map are one and the same because they're in a lovely open area, whereas the other two are distinct valleys, if you like, so the Bekaa Valley and the coast section. Yeah, quite sort of separate, and once you're committed to them, that's it. You are committed to them and you've got to get troops and logistics along those particular routes. But the balance is, because interestingly, although the Commonwealth invade to control the Vichy area, at the very beginning of the game, the Vichy, I would argue, are the stronger army and in fact have throughout the game the best units. So their counter-attack capability is very good, and actually that's one of the things I love about this game, is its ability to be won by either side. Personally, in the number of games I've played, I've seen both sides win. 2 knockouts or instant wins by the Vichy and 1 last-ditch win by the Commonwealth with the capture of Damascus. But obviously it all comes down to playing the game, which is why I thought to show this version of it again. Other things of note, that you'll look down in the bottom left, there is a black arrow that effectively is pointing to the area where the commandos can land. So on turn 1 there will be a commando landing. It's in an attempt by the Commonwealth to kind of bounce up, because as you look at the coast you will notice that there are 3 distinct river lines, the Litani River being the first one, 2306 I suppose it starts. Then there's another river just past Sidon, which is where that second red cube is, and then almost off the map at the furthest left, Demour, where those other 2 Vichy French units are, another river. So typical issues for the Commonwealth, trying to get a long and narrow coastal stretch with the defensive barriers of rivers. Not an ideal approach. Having said that, the next approach up, which is the Mejadoun, Bekaa Valley, that is pretty much the same, because the terrain there is, well, certainly favours the defender. It's a typical mountainous valley region, so not a lot of joy. So you could argue that the best approach is the one towards Damascus. There are also rules for Damascus was declared a free city. Nobody wanted to destroy it. So it was protected by both sides in a way. So although you've got some blocking terrain in front of it, once you're at it, it's something that the Commonwealth are capable of achieving. So that's the start. Hope that fills in some blanks. We'll pick it up from there. So the first action basically is logistical. In Reluctant Enemies there are no rules for weather. The weather is always good, no effects at all. And for this turn there is no first player determination, because it's automatically the Commonwealth player. Air units obviously have only just been put on the map, so they're all active, so there's no air unit return, no air unit refit. So we kind of move straight into the reinforcement phase, but again, in terms of units, they're already on the map. So the first thing we need to do is roll for supply. and the roll that we made was an 8, so the Commonwealth get 2 SPs and 2 T, which you can see on the Commonwealth supply table there in the middle of the map. And I elect to put 2 T into Amman and the 2 SPs into Haifa. Supply in OCS allows artillery barrage and is also the fuel for moving anything that is motorised or mechanised. I'll touch on that maybe more as we kind of move some units around. We also roll for variable reinforcements, which are additional steps to create things that are damaged or replace things that are lost. Unfortunately, we rolled a 7 for that, which means we get nothing. We need at least an 8 to get some variables for the Commonwealth. So with that done, we can move on to the movement phase. Okay, let's get the first movement done, and a little bit about the actual units themselves. I'm sure most people are pretty familiar with this, but I've separated these out so that the stacks are an infantry stack, so all of those have a white number to represent their movement, which is the 3, so the right hand number, the 6 being the combat strength, and the middle in the number being the action rating, troop quality if you like. Higher is better, lower is poorer. Counters in this, or combat counters in this, have 2 sides. That would be the combat side, that would be the movement side. So obviously that's a motorised unit. The black designation shows that it's got trucks, so the infantry can either move on foot, which is the 3 movement point side, or they can move within the trucks, which is the motorised side with the 9. Different movement rates affect the terrain in both cases, and also the critical part is you have to expend fuel to move a motorised unit or a mechanised unit. If I just quickly look at the other stack, which at the minute I've got it marked up in reserve, because obviously in an ideal world the idea here is that these units are going to move along the coast road to attack the 8th Algerians, the Gooms, in Iskandarun, or Iskandarun. And the ideal would be that, having been successful in combat, in the later exploitation phase, this reserve unit will be allowed to be released and can motor up and see if it can do some damage further up along the road. But let's just have a little look to see what we've got, because there isn't a great deal, to be fair. We've got some motorised anti-tank, we've got some armoured cars, which are the Royals, and we've got some tanks, albeit probably light tanks, which are the cavalry unit of the 6th Div. You'll notice that those 2 units there, the Royals, have red in behind their NATO symbol, and the 6th Div have yellow. Now that is a bonus because of the combat strength of the either mechanised or armoured units, armour being the yellow, mechanised being the red. Essentially in open terrain that would give you double the strength point that you can see in open, presuming the enemy has no anti-tank equivalent, of course, or 1.5 times the strength for the mechanised units. But again, we'll kind of deal with that as we kind of come through things. So initially those units are just there, they're in reserve, whereas this stack of units, we are going to move up along the coast road. We've got a movement allowance of 3, and I'm just going to drop these absolutely everywhere. So the infantry, the artillery, and the supporting Israeli unit moving up that way, and likewise this one, but we'll just slightly flank and push him out further along that little stretch of beach. I'm sure you'll thank us for that later. Interesting, colourful note that probably everybody realises. Palmach is the unit that Moshe Dayan fought in during the Second World War, and it's actually part of this combat where the famous eye patch unfortunately was acquired. Yeah. I might as well, from within there, we can also do the next attack up. So again, if we just look through now, here we have cavalry, interestingly enough. What I just need to do is check the movement for that. So again, leg, 1 in hills, 2 in rough. So 1, 2, 3 for the Cheshires. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the staffs, and the rest. Again, we've got a unit in reserve. So the other 3 units simply move up to bring in the attack. In reserve, this time we've got this famous regiment, the Scots Greys. It didn't have a very good outing, I think it's fair to say, in Syria. They were here being retrained, losing their horses and becoming motorised infantry, and didn't seem to suit them initially. But hopefully they'll give a good account of themselves in this particular replay. Okay, that's the first 2 sections of movement done. We'll move across now into the more open area and see what happens over there. So next, the assault up the Central Valley. Again, mostly infantry, so we're going to just kind of move them up 1, 2 and 3. Get themselves into contact. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2 and 3. 1, 2. So here's our first motorized unit that we want to move. And as I said before, this is slightly different in that what we need to do is we need to use some supply. So what we'll need to do is, if we look back down that main road, so if we come back down this little road here, and if I just push this around a little bit, will it let me do it? Yeah, there we go. To the headquarters here. So you've got 5 supply there. So we're going to break that down into a 4 and have 3T left over. 1 SP is 4T. I'll leave that as a 2 there just as a reminder. But that then allows this motorized unit to move, and he doesn't need to move far, he's just using his truck movement, which has to stop when it enters that zock anyway. Now the next one up towards Fick. 1, 2, 3 along the track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take him out to there. Again, just trying to be clever and block off a zone of control. And again, we see we have an armour unit. So same as before, we need to spend 1T of supply. And again, if we look back down this little road here, we can kind of see there's 3T sitting there with a nice HQ. The number 8 is the throw range for the supply. So he can throw 8 hexes or 8 movement points using truck supply to send the fuel to that unit. So that's exactly what he's going to do. So if we take that 3T away, and we can replace that with a 2, and this armoured unit is now fueled and can rattle along the little road behind to add its punch to that combat there. Okay, and now as we move towards Dara, straight away, if we look through this stack here, we're going to need to spend 1 SP to fuel 4 of our units. So I'm going to take that one away, replace it with those 4. The HQ isn't going to move at the minute, he can stay where he is. The Punjab are going to move into motorised movement. Slight sort of flanking manoeuvre to cause again some more heartache for the Vichy. The engineers and the artillery will follow along, but just stop short, blocking that road there. Seven into there, and then again the Rajputs. Three up to there. Okay. Okay, just some other things of note from the game before we kind of leave this phase and go into the Vichy reaction phase. We did try with the RAF to do a fighter sweep at Ryak Air Base, which is to the far right of the map. So effectively flying right across the country. They were at a disadvantage, and essentially it was a non-event. Probably a bit of a skirmish, and both sides headed home. Honours even, no damage done. We also tried a bombing raid against the unit you can see in the top right, the cavalry, the Vichy cavalry. Same deal essentially. The flak by the Vichy unit was ineffective. You need to roll an 11, which they failed, but then the bombing was ineffective as well. And also along the coast, we successfully rolled for both units of the Royal Navy to sortie and try and help out with the gooms on the coast road. The Royal Navy units both passed their role to be available, but once again we rolled poorly on the barrage, and the goom survived intact, no disorganisation. We also at this point we roll because there is a chance that the commandos actually land now at the end of this phase, but again we rolled a 5, so they're going to come in at the end of the exploitation phase, or during the exploitation phase, so no appearance from them as we speak. And again during the Vichy reaction phase, another air sortie, another unsuccessful air sortie came in to try and hit this hex here. Had a good chance, but unfortunately failed on the roll. And the only other thing of note was during that phase, we released one of the restricted units from Beirut, which is this Legion unit here, and it motorised down the coast. And that's it. So we're into the combat phase.